And so since yesterday evening when I thought of this topic, whatever it was, and I know it had to do with the leagues working together, the ACC, the Big Ten, and the Pac-12. Like there are spots of this subject that I do recall, but then trying to remember its the entirety of what exactly it entailed, I can't remember, because obviously yesterday we talked about the fact that, look, there are advantages to these leagues coming together. There are advantages to the fact that the ACC, the Big Ten, and the Pac-12 are going to work together from a scheduling aspect. And from that standpoint, I started thinking about things that we had been talking about yesterday on that front, and the power of this potential conglomerate and what it could do for contract negotiations. And I just believe that at this point, college football, whether we like it or not, is trending towards a professional model. And not necessarily a professional model in that, players are going to be paid by the institutions or anything like that. I think players are still going to benefit off of the NIL. Other players won't. They'll take advantage of the free opportunity to play college sports. Maybe they tweet out every once in a while for a biscuit, whatever it turns out to be. Speaking of biscuits, by the way, the biscuit king of the South, joining us here in hour number 2, Mike Yuva will be a part of the program this afternoon in hour 2, where we will peek over the fence in the backyard of the South Carolina Gamecocks, because, of course, if you are a listener to this show, you know the Gamecocks tend to peek into our backyard to be a part of Clemson Sports Talk. Now, from the standpoint of these schools, scheduling becomes an interesting bird, because now we are presented with unique matchups, as we kind of touched on yesterday. And while a matchup between North Carolina and Wisconsin might not seem all that incredible to some, it is a better ball game. By the way, I just remember what I wanted to talk about. And boom goes the dynamite. It deals with Notre Dame. Ha! I just had Notre Dame on my mind because I'm going to get to them momentarily. But I'm making my note now. Finally, the lost thought has come back to Swanny. But, one of the things that we kind of touched on, in addition to those new matchups that can be created by these leagues, I mean, who wouldn't want to see a matchup between Clemson and Southern Cal, or Oregon and Ohio State, Oregon and Ohio State, which was a game that was supposed to be played a year ago, or Florida State, Michigan. I mean, listen, you can connect the dots on the games that you can add into this. And it almost puts the SEC in a bit of a precarious situation. Yes, certainly in conference, they've got incredible matchups, incredible games across the board. But who do you go out and schedule outside of what Clemson and South Carolina, in a rivalry game that exists, and some of those things? But if the Pac-12, the Big Ten, and the ACC are all scheduling together, and in this scenario, and no offense here, no offense to the Big 12/8, however many remain, I don't know that the names on the marquee are names that SEC fans are looking at and going, yeah, you know what? I really think that when LSU hooks up with Texas Tech, that's going to be a marquee game. Like, that's the problem that the remaining Big 8 teams have right now. The problem is their brands are not perceived, and probably rightfully so, as being the top brands in the Big 12. As a matter of fact, as I kind of ran through the laundry list of teams in that league in recent years, before Texas A&M and Colorado and Missouri left the league, and Nebraska, like, if you stack that league up when it was the actual Big 12, so what would that be, like Big 12 1998? Something like that. I mean, is that Is that suitable for you? In the Big 12 in 1998, forget the rankings, forget the standings. Kansas State actually went 8-0, 11-2 that year. Bill Snyder and those guys. But Nebraska, bigger name than anybody currently left behind in the Big 12. Gone. Texas A&M, currently bigger name than anybody left behind in the Big 12. Gone. Oklahoma, currently bigger than any name in the Big 12. Gone. Texas, currently bigger than any name in the Big 12. Gone. Colorado versus Oklahoma State. I know certainly Iowa State's much improved, but you see my point. Of the top teams in the Big 12 20 years ago, before we had our first shakeup of college football, the teams that have been picked away or moved away are the ones at the top, almost the top half. Let's be honest, right? If Oklahoma State and or maybe Iowa State at this point, given their footprint, if one of those two teams left, I would stand in a room with somebody who wanted to make an argument that of the Big 12 teams, the top 6 teams left. Like, I could give you a plausible reason to argue that. And so I don't feel great about what remains, because what remains, unfortunately, and look, I got a chance to go on Sikkim 365 radio the other day, right in the heart of Waco, right in the heart of the Baylor Bear territory. But I got to tell you, South Carolina versus Baylor is not exactly jumping off the page for people. Is that, well, Swanny, you're picking and choosing. How about Alabama and Baylor? Yeah, but it doesn't carry the same punch as Alabama and Michigan would carry, or Alabama and Oregon, or Alabama and Florida State. And you go, well, Swanny, now you're just picking the top teams in those other leagues. Well, yeah, I am. And that's the problem that the Big 12, the remaining Big 12 teams has. Who wants to dance with you when it doesn't really present a marquee name? And that's the problem. Like, when the top half of your league, like, you take any league and eliminate the top half. You take the top 6 teams, 8 teams, however many teams are in some of these leagues out, and you say, man, you like that marquee matchup between Vanderbilt and Kansas? I don't, actually. Oh, no. Okay, well, certainly you'd want to tune in and see. I'm trying to be nice, like when I pick schools here. Certainly you want to tune in and watch, I don't know, Duke and Arizona. Like, the problem the remaining Big 12 teams has at this point, to me, as much as I want them to hold a seat at the table, if that's what they choose to do, and that's what I would do as long as I could, they don't present a marquee name that the SEC would want to hook up with. And the teams the SEC probably wants to play are either A, now in their league, Texas, Texas A&M, Oklahoma, or B, are in the other leagues that have just sort of attempted to come together in a way to stabilize things, on and on and on. So that's the issue that now faces those remaining teams in what I guess I'll call the Big 8. Nobody's running to join it. And with a conglomerate of the ACC, the Big Ten, and the and the Pac-12 coming together, if they schedule each other, it's like a game of keep away. In the Big 8, the remaining Big 8 teams are sitting there going, well, we would like to schedule some people. And the only people that I could see logically that would want to schedule them might be the SEC, only because who's the SEC? You can't just play every game in your own little sandbox. some point you got to step out of conference. That's what most people would tell you. And I would agree that if you get bigger and bigger and bigger, eventually, no, you don't necessarily have to, because the conference would be so big that it would be just like an entire, like the NFC or the AFC. It would be like a huge conference. Nobody's going to pick through that and go, man, the teams in the NFC East don't play anybody, because you know how it's structured. Now, the other fly in the ointment in all of this is Notre Dame, who, again, I got to get back to on that topic that I brought up just a little bit ago. And I need to make another note. I was about to forget what it was about. Now I think I got enough on my note, my lost thoughts, to get back to it. But Notre Dame is a unique piece in this. And yesterday, I think perhaps rightfully so, I wondered what would be the effect of a possible conglomerate on the Fighting Irish. And it may be nothing. It may be nothing. Because the Seminoles, because Notre Dame is already in bed with the ACC. They take on the Seminoles, Florida State, September the 5th in their season opener. They also play at Virginia Tech on October the 9th. They take on North Carolina on October 30th. They face Virginia on November 13th and Georgia Tech on November 20th. This season, for the Fighting Irish, 5 games against the ACC. Some seasons, they have 6. Anthony shared the show. That's a penalty, Anthony. Why? How could you do that to us, Anthony? All you're going to do is clog us up with more people, more shares, more likes, help grow the show. It's as if Anthony would like this program to succeed. So now I got to put you in the penalty box, Anthony. Now I got to put you in the penalty box. 2-minute penalty. But look at the remaining games on Notre Dame's schedule. They play Purdue. They play Wisconsin. 2 teams from the Big Ten. They play Stanford. They play Southern Cal. 2 teams from the Pac-12. 9 of Notre Dame's 12 games come against teams from the ACC, the Big Ten, and the Pac-12. They don't need to do anything if these leagues merge, if these leagues schedule together. Notre Dame's already doing it. Like, I don't like to put the Fighting Irish out in front of anything.
I'll knock your brains out if you had any.
But I have to here. I have to put them out in front, even if you want to knock my brains out. If I had any. I think you have to look at that and go, So, the Fighting Irish, which guys like me have sat behind mics like this and said, well, what are they going to do? How are they going to survive in an ever-shifting landscape? Now, look, if the ACC and these other leagues go to 16 teams, then by all means, I think Notre Dame's got to figure something out. It would be hard for me to imagine 4 16-team leagues and Notre Dame. That just doesn't seem like it would fly. Because at that point, those brands, honestly, they really don't owe the Fighting Irish anything. And they haven't been as relevant as they once were in a long time. Swanny, they were in the college football playoff a year ago. They beat Clemson. They played for the ACC championship. They were the ACC regular season. But they're not who they once were, which was the most dominant force in college football with Heisman Trophy winners left and right, with national championships littering locker rooms. And they're still a huge brand. It's not to be dismissive at all. But at some point, as things grow further, Notre Dame will probably have to yield some of its independence. And that was the thing the ACC had last year that they didn't take advantage of. I mean, they had Notre Dame's back against the wall. If there was ever a season that you could have put the screws to the Fighting Irish, that would have been it. But the league didn't. They embraced them, brought them in for a year. And it worked out as both teams got into the college football playoff. And I don't know if they'll ever be in the ACC. But based on their schedule, I would think that Jack Swarbrick and everybody sitting up there in South Bend, Indiana, is sitting back, relaxing, recognizing that, oh, you know what? If these three leagues merge and schedule together, we're good. We already play these teams. We already play these teams. And I don't want to necessarily say if I think that's right, wrong, or indifferent for the Fighting Irish, but I definitely think it makes the belief of something between these three leagues much more plausible. Much more plausible. 803-450-0086. Text line, phone line, hit us up. Speaking of the Fighting Irish, I'm glad we got back on to them, and I'm glad that they came across my mind because it tweaked me back to the lost thought. Yeah, they're not in the ACC now, but if they were,